let's talk about debugging. So you want to be able to use the Eclipse debugger. Let's look at what we got. iPerson. Great. We know people have names. You can get name and set name. We've got iNinja. What do we know about ninjas? Well, a ninja extends a person because a ninja is a subcategory of person, and you can get and set the honor of a ninja, as we all know. What does person look like? I don't know. Looks reasonable. Person implements ninja. We've got a constructor. We've got some overrides. Great. Let's look at ninja. Looks fantastic. Ninja implements ninja. And of course, since ninja extends person, we're going to get everything from person as well. So we got name, we got honor, we got a constructor, we got a bunch of these methods. I don't know, life looks great. We also want to have a guild, right? Ninjas belong to guilds. The guilds have a name. Guilds are located in a city. Guilds have a list of ninjas in them, and as we all know, once you join a ninja guild, you can never go back. So there's an add method, but not a remove method. We got a constructor where you set the name and the city. You can get the size of a guild, guild name, whatever. So it's still a pretty simple chunk of code, but it's not totally trivial because there's multiple files, so there's a little bit more to keep track of. We've also written some test cases, okay? Test name and honor. I create a ninja named Alicia with 100 honor. I'm going to assert that Alicia is the name and 100 is the honor. Okay, seems reasonable. I've got test set name honor, where I'm going to create Alicia with 100 honor. I'm going to check to make sure those worked correctly. They should work correctly if it worked correctly up here. Now we're going to try setting the honor and setting the name and making sure that all of that works. Great. We're going to do guild name and city, right? We know it's the Assassins, but we're spelling the way the cool kids do, and Assassins with a Z, and they're, of course, in Galesburg. I don't know. Then we're checking that this stuff works. We're checking that if we create a new guild, that the size of the guild is empty, because we haven't added any ninjas. And then when we add one ninja, Carlos, the size of the guild should be 1. So let's run these test cases. Run as JUnit. Let's see what we've got. Okay, so first thing, green means it worked. Blue means the test case failed, but it failed, as you can see here, with an assertion failed error. Let's look at this in more detail, right? So when you get these errors, the wrong thing to do is go, crap, there's an error, let me panic, and just go start randomly changing things. No, read the freaking error message. So it's telling us this test case failed because we expected 150, but it was 250. Where did that happen? Well, I can double click this, it'll jump me there. This is the exact line where it failed. This is the expected value, this is the actual value. Expected 150, but was 250. That means I set 150, and I expected to get back 150, but instead I got back 250. That's giving me a huge amount of information. Blue means an assertion failed. I asserted something was true. It wasn't true. This tells me what it means, right? So that's important. These are red. These mean errors. Runtime exceptions. So that's different than assertion. This means it ran, but it got the wrong value. This means it crashed. Okay, so let's look at, what might be going on here. We're getting null pointer exception up here. We're getting null pointer exception down here. Something about the size of the guild it doesn't like. Something about adding a ninja it doesn't like. I'm going to debug those second. I'm going to start with get name, set name honor. Now, I know what the error is because I put it in there. Let's pretend I don't. Also, let's pretend that this code is more complicated than it is and I can't just look at it. Let's use the debugger. So, probably get honor works. How do I know get honor works? Well, when I create a new ninja with 100, and then I get the honor, 100 is what comes out. Now, it's true I'm doing get honor here. What's different about this get honor and this get honor? Well, this one I did a set honor first, then I did here. So, I'm thinking the error might be in set honor. I don't know for sure, but that's my guess. So here's what I'm going to do. There's a couple ways I can do this. Let's try this. Let's put a breakpoint here. So I'm going to double click. You see this little thing shows up. That's called the breakpoint. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run these test cases. Watch this. I'm going to right click to bring up this menu. Instead of saying run as JUnit, I'm going to say debug as JUnit. And so what's going to happen is it's going to run all of, well, that's exciting. Ha! There we go. It's going to run all of this. Now it's going to ask, do you want to switch to this view, the debugging view? Say yes and say don't ask again. You can see up here, here's your debugger, here's your Java. You can switch back and forth between them. Now there's 5 buttons in the debugger that you care about. there's, as usual with Eclipse, there's a million buttons. You don't care about most of them. This button means, well, let me explain what the debugger means. So I'm running this code. You can see all of this. Wow, there's a ton of crap that happened. Basically, all of this is JUnit. JUnit uses a whole bunch of fancy stuff, but basically, it gets down to we're inside this test case at this line of code. Everything is suddenly stopped, right? The whole entire code has gone ahead and stopped, and up here, this is showing us all of our variables, right? So I can click on N, and it's going to call the toString method. Now, the first thing I'm looking in here, this is crap. This is the default toString method. I would like a better toString method than what I currently have. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use, so I've looked at this, and I'm like, if I'm debugging things about ninjas, I need a toString method. I don't have a good toString method. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to click this to stop the debugger, because I don't want to leave like a million debugging sessions. I'll venture on in memory. I'm going to switch back here, and I'm like, you know what? Here's the thing. Oh, and then this is on JUnit. I'm going to go back to my package view. I'm going to go into Ninja here. I want a toString method. So I'm just going to go ahead and add this. I'm going to say public string toString, and I'm going to return, I don't know, name plus, has honor plus honor. I don't know. That looks good. Now, I can use this menu to just sort of relaunch that. Right, so if I do this, it'll just run the test cases again. This will run the test cases, but with the debugger. So let's try that. Pops this window up again. Boom, we're stopped here. This is great. Right, we're stopped here again. Now if I click on this, aha, I'm getting the toString method. So this is yet another reason why all of your classes should have a toString method, because if you don't have toString methods, the debugger's worthless. It's not worthless, but it's worth less. Not worthless, but worth slightly less than it was before. Okay, so we know what this button does. This halts the debugging session. This tells it to keep running until either you hit another breakpoint, so maybe like I put a breakpoint here. This would say keep running until either you crash, so if this assertion fails, which it does, that would crash, or you hit another breakpoint, or it just runs to completion, right? So this means keep going to crashing, returning normally, or hitting another breakpoint. This means step into. This will step into a method call on this particular line. This means step over. This will run this line and then stop at the next line, and you can look at all the stuff going on up here. This means step return. That means run this method until it returns. So something really cool. If you step into a method, but you're like, oh, I didn't mean to step into this. This happens all the time where you've got a bunch of lines of a bunch of code sort of on the same line, and it relies on constructors for built-in Java stuff. Maybe there's a string constructor or a point constructor, and you want to step into something, but you step into one of those. If you step into something that you didn't mean to step into, just step return. That'll return that method real quick, and then see what's happening. So I'm stopped at this line. I'm going to go ahead and step into it. So now you see, boom, I've stepped into set honor. Maybe I didn't mean to step into that. I'm not really sure. You're probably looking at this and you can see the error right away, but let's pretend that you can't. I'm going to step return. So that brings us back here. This line is now finished. We've gone on to the next line. Now if I click on N, here's the toString. Alicia has honor 250. If I look at this, I see honor is in fact 250. Name is Alicia. So clearly this method was wrong because I set it to 150 and it didn't end up at 150. It ended up at 250. So now if I tell this to, step over or to keep running, either one, if I try to step over this, boom, I get the crash that I expected. It's going to do a whole bunch of wonky stuff here. That doesn't really matter. At this point, I've gotten all the information I need. Let me just tell this to keep running. Yeah, so it's basically finished. If I go back over here to Java, you can see we get the same results we had before. We just sort of stopped the debugger. We used the debugger to stop the code in the process. This is still not working. And whenever these open up, whatever this is, I don't know, I'm just going to close that. I don't need that. So now I know it's basically going to be the set honor method. I'm going to, click this. I'm going to right-click and say open declaration, jump me into the... Well, that was not what I wanted at all, because that opened the declaration, which isn't what I wanted. What I want is the actual code. I'll just go into Ninja, and so we look down here. This does the wrong thing, and you can kind of see it right away. I meant to say this.honor equal honor. I accidentally said plus equal honor. Let me fix that. and let me run the test cases again. Go. Okay, good. This is now correct, right? This is okay. We've still got the error here. Okay, let's think about debugging this. Let's look at this a little bit more carefully. So we've got null pointer exception. So again, when you get an error, one thing you can do, totally panic and just start randomly changing things, or you can be like, Java's telling me this, maybe it's important, let me read the error message. What do I know? I know it's a null pointer exception, I know it's this line, let me go to this line. Okay, this tells me that at this line there's a null pointer exception. That means something is null. But null pointer exception has a very specific meaning. Null pointer is only going to generate null pointer exception if it's to the left of a dot, right? So you either call a method on something or you access a variable on something. That's the only way to generate a null pointer exception. So let's look at this. What things are left of a dot? Well, ninjas is to the left of a dot, and this is to the left of a dot. Let me think about that. This cannot be null by definition. This means you called a method on size. So let me go back one, actually. So this can't be null because this is the special reference that points to the current instance variable. So by definition, to get to this line of code, this can't be null. If this were null, then whatever called size would have generated a null pointer exception. To demonstrate this is a stack trace. Let's go up one. Right? So here we're saying assert equals 0 to g.size. If g is null, you'll get the null pointer exception here, right? That's what null pointer means. If g's null and g's to the left of a dot, then you get the null pointer exception. But that isn't what happened. If we go here, right, this can't be null because, again, it would have already generated. So ninjas has to be null. That's the only possible way to define the information that we've seen. The state of the world must be that ninjas is null. Why is ninjas null? Well, I don't know. Maybe I'll try to debug it. So let me go back to my test case, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and stop it here, right? And so we'll stop here, and then we'll, step over this, and then look at what guild looks like. We can step into the constructor or something like that if we want to. So now I'm going to rerun this with the debugger. Now, I set this up. Oh, well, it didn't. Okay, I'll show you something else about this in a second. So, good. We've gotten to here. We've got guild G, new guild, blah, blah, blah. Life is good. I'm just going to go ahead, because it's going to fail at this line. It was going to fail inside size. So I'm going to step over this. Great. Now, let me look at G. Again, I don't have a toString method, but I might not need one. Let me open up G. What's inside G? Well, there's a city. Does city look right? Galesburg. That's cool. Does guild name look right? The Assassins, written in the cool way that the kids these days write things. What about ninjas? Ninjas is null. Well, why could ninjas possibly be null? All we've done is call a constructor. So the only possible explanation to explain what I've just learned from the debugger at this moment, well, what sets ninjas? Well, the constructor sets ninjas. The only thing we've done is call a constructor. So if somehow we're getting a null pointer exception in size, I don't know, let's try that out. Let's step into this. So we're doing this.ninjas.size. Well, let's look at what things look like. We'll open this up. Ninjas still null, which kind of makes sense. So clearly, that's going to generate null pointer exception. We're taking ninjas, which is null, and we're trying to take the size. You can't take the size of null, going to get a null pointer exception. That's what's going to happen. That's the only possible explanation. So now that we know that, I'm going to go ahead and halt my debugging session. I'm going to switch back to my Java view, go back to my package explorer. Here in Guild, let's go up and look at the constructor. And so if you look at this, this is like one of the top 3 most common errors that you get when you first start doing object-oriented programming. You passed in some instance variables, or you passed in some parameters, and you remember to set those to instance variables, but you had this collection sitting out here, and you never initialized the collection. Right, so ninjas is picking up the default value of all reference types, which is null. I've made this error a million times. If you haven't made this error yet, get ready because you will. So I'm going to do new linked list. I'm going to do control space because I'm too lazy and I don't feel like typing. And I guess I need the generic in here. What is it? It's an iNinja. Good. So you can sort of do this. One other thing you'll sometimes see in Java, in case you don't know this, I don't know if you know this or not. well, sorry, that's not what I meant to do. What you can do is you can actually take this and cut it and, you know, plop it in here and then like not do this in the constructor. This actually means the same thing. When you like pick an initial value of an instance variable, I don't need a second one of those there, Java's just going to see that and be like, well, you meant to put that in the constructor, and it'll just move it into the constructor for you. So Java's cool like that. Go Java. Great. So this should fix this error. This actually should, oh, well that's going to show up, isn't it? I still have 10 minutes. Also, I'm double booked, so I'm going to do the advising meeting and not the lunch with the alum. You know, because I'm very student focused. Right, let's try this again. Boom! Everything passed. Ha! So, important. And then one other thing to note. Remember, we stuck a bunch of breakpoints in there. If we run this just with the debugger doesn't know that it's fixed. Right, so this is still going. You can right-click on this and say, like, toggle breakpoint to turn it off, and then tell it to keep running, and then here we are, we'll right-click and toggle breakpoint to turn it off. I think there might be some way to clear all breakpoints. Now we tell this to run, and it's done, and everything passed. So, take-home messages here. Read the exceptions, okay? Test cases can either pass, they can fail because an assertion failed, or they can fail because of a crash. If you get a crash, read the stack trace and learn how to interpret what the stack trace is telling you. If you don't know how to do that, learn how to do that. You get better with it with practice. You're not in intro CS anymore. You can't just look at an error message and say something is wrong and I'm not going to read this error message. You're in computer science now. You're going to spend a large amount of your time reading error messages, some of which are helpful, some of which are completely useless. You're also going to spend a lot of time Googling error messages or just Googling things to try to learn stuff, and some large percentage of the resources you find are not going to be helpful. You know, welcome to my life. This is basically what we do. I've actually had a student in the past tell me that they were switching their CS major to a minor, or even getting rid of their minor, something they were like not doing as much CS as they were planning on doing because, and this is what they were like, you know, your discipline, you basically just Google things all the time. You know, I want something where, you know, just Google it isn't the answer, which is fair, right? That is literally, we do a lot of Googling of things. But remember, you know, these stack traces are actually useful. They tell you a lot of information. Use that information and figure out how to use the debugger. Again, oh, if I run the debugger, it won't switch. Well, maybe it'll switch to the debugging view. No, it just ran it and didn't work. Let's stick another breakpoint in here. So I wanted to point out those buttons again. Come on, boom. Remember, keep going to the next breakpoint or until it ends or crashes. Stop the debugger. Remember, don't leave a bunch of debugging sessions half open. It'll fill up your memory. Step into a function. Step return from a function. And step over a line of code. Remember, you can view all your variables here. You can expand them. And remember that when you click on something, it's going to call its toString method. So you may as well stick in toString methods for everything. Great. That's what I've got.